Hi. Over the last few years, I've noticed that many people seem to be stepping back or stepping away from the LDS Church. It's happening so much that I feel like I want to talk about it, hoping that I, my friends, and my family, both in and out of the church, can understand a little bit more about what is going on and how it might affect our lives. People leaving the church is not a new thing. We've always lost some members here or there for a variety of reasons, but current losses of members look like they've accelerated noticeably, especially in the United States. Sunday attendance is down, fewer young people are serving missions, and attendance at church colleges is dropping. So who are the people that are leaving? After looking around at what statistical evidence I could find, and the stories of people close to me, it seems like people of all ages, genders, and income levels are leaving. It's no longer a phenomenon of just the youth slipping away. Now it includes their parents and even their grandparents. And it's also no longer a matter of recent converts or the economically disadvantaged leaving. Those leaving now include many lifelong members, even those educated at church schools and who have held important callings. So why are people leaving these days? What's behind this increasing exodus? I've done a lot of reading and looking around, and there seem to be a number of reasons, and many who leave do so for multiple reasons, not just one. However, I've noticed some trends and reasons for leaving that a variety of sources have confirmed as the most common. They are, first, the advent of the internet and smartphones. This has had some serious ramifications for the church, the major ones being the ability of members to find previously hidden information about the church that were not easily accessible to them before, the ability of members who have doubts to find the experiences and research of others who also have doubts, and the ability of those who are leaving or who have left to use the internet to find like-minded community and avoid feeling outcast or alone. Number two, exposure to newly available church historical records that challenge the authenticity, wholesomeness, or believability of the church's narrative about Joseph Smith's first vision, the translation of the Book of Mormon, the translation of the Book of Abraham, the origin of the temple endowment, the church's teachings and treatment of blacks, and the doctrine of polygamy and the source of D&C 132, among others. Number three, modern church policies, doctrines, and actions that some members find concerning, such as the church's treatment of LGBTQ individuals, their treatment of women, their hoarding of hundreds of billions of dollars of tithing donations in real estate and stock investment accounts, their involvement in politics and political donations, and their involvement in COVID policies and enforcement. And finally, the perception that the church leaders for years have covered up or hidden many of these things in a way that appears to be deliberately dishonest. These are a few of the most common reasons why members currently doubt the church and its claims, not only of being the one true church, but even claims that Jesus Christ and God are real. When members of the church come up against these issues or other issues on their own, how do they typically react? Some try to ignore or discount the issues, to do as Elder Holland instructed and to, quote, doubt their doubts, while remaining true believers in the church and true to its leaders. But for many of those who believe the issues are serious and credible, these discoveries cause them to stop trusting in the core beliefs of the LDS Church. And from what I can tell, they typically go down one of two paths. They either step back from their beliefs while remaining in the church, or they step away from the church altogether. The first group is those who remain in the church, but step back from trusting that what it teaches is true. Because they no longer believe in its core beliefs, they are sometimes referred to as cafeteria Mormons, because they seem free to pick and choose which church activities and meetings to engage in, which doctrines to obey, and whether or not to pay attention to what the leaders tell them. They may or may not continue to pay tithing, attend the temple, or wear garments. They often hold callings, but usually they are picky about which callings they'll accept and how much they will dedicate to those callings. The biggest reason I can see for people to remain in this group, staying in the church while stepping back from fully believing in its doctrines, is so that they can remain close to their friends, family, and community. They may fear rejection, isolation, or judgment if they were to be open about what they really believe and don't believe. They could experience financial hardships if they break with the LDS community, or they could risk damaging their relationships with the most important people in their lives. And so this group of people dress like Mormons, act like Mormons, and call themselves Mormons, but in their hearts they are checked out to some degree or other from the beliefs and requirements of the church. The second group are those people who step away from the church upon learning of issues that cause them to distrust the church and its teachings. They are sometimes referred to as ex-Mormons, especially by those who continue to remain in the church. People in this group typically stop attending the LDS Church. While a small portion of them who step away go on to join other, usually Christian churches, the majority of this group who have responded to recent surveys identify as either agnostic or atheist. Upon leaving, most people in this group don't seem to make a lot of fanfare about their exit. A small number request their names to be removed from the church records, and a very few get excommunicated, but the vast majority just fade away quietly. The transition for this group to being out of the church is usually painful, especially if they have been members for a long period of time or have friends and family that remain in the church. They usually inform their loved ones that they are no longer active in the church and experience some level of criticism, rejection, or isolation. They might even experience trauma in those relationships. Many report going through a difficult adjustment period before they are able to find a meaningful new way of living post-LDS. What is clear about both groups, those who step back from their beliefs while remaining outwardly Mormon and those who step away from the church, is that they usually stop believing in the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, and the foundations of the Mormon movement. They almost unanimously report feeling betrayed by a life and lifestyle that they once loved. This is a very generalized summary of what I have been able to both see and find out about people doubting or leaving the church. I've come to empathize deeply with both of these groups of people. I mourn with those who feel deceived by the things that they have learned or experienced in the church. I empathize with those who are trying to stay close to their loved ones who remain members, even with their doubts. And I honor, love, and respect my many friends and family who continue to believe fully in the teachings of the church. There are so many variables at play in all of these issues that it's impossible for me to judge anyone for where they land in their personal relationship with the church or as an organization. Now, I would also like to talk about another group of people who learn about these serious issues with the church, but who continue to believe in the Book of Mormon. This group of people doesn't feel like they are the ones stepping back or even leaving the church. Instead, they believe that the church has gone away from the truths of the Book of Mormon, and that it is the church that is leaving them. While many from this group remain active in the church, some are discovered and excommunicated, and others quietly leave the church. But wherever they land, they continue to believe in the Book of Mormon and what it teaches about Jesus Christ. This third group is the one where I think I fit the most, and it fits my personal experience. So I'd like to tell my story. I was born in the church to a family that traces its roots back to the time of Joseph Smith. Church was my reality since the time of my birth. In the movie The Truman Show, the fictional director Christof says, "We accept the reality with which we are presented." I accepted the LDS reality as it was presented to me, hook, line, and sinker, and I lived it to the fullest. I attended church, seminary, BYU. I served a mission and held many leadership callings. I didn't drink caffeine, didn't cuss, kept the Sabbath day, didn't watch rated R movies. I got married in the temple and started a true blue LDS family. I was a Mormon's Mormon. But along the way, some things started to make me think and wonder. For example, when one of our dear sons stepped away from the church. That caused me to think deeply about eternal families and free agency. When my parents got divorced at the end of 6 years of working together in the temple, I thought deeply about the origins of temples, eternal marriage, and the church judgment. When, while serving recently in a leadership position, I got a peek behind the curtain at the higher church authorities, I thought deeply about human motives of church leaders and the structures that kept them in power. And when I had to choose between following the leaders on an unnamed recent national health panic by going all in on masks and untested medical experiments, or practicing allowing free agency, I thought deeply about the role of prophets and the rights of individuals to make their own choices. So these and other things I experienced along the way and that I saw within the church over the years really weighed on my mind and my heart. There were times when I wondered if God was even there, or if any of my beliefs were true. I kept going through the motions in church, but I felt something was slipping. I started having panic attacks at night. I thought often of death and blackness and nothingness. And then last year, 2 things happened that were the catalysts for everything to come to a head. The first was when I decided on a career change from being a high school teacher to teaching at college. In the break between the 2 jobs, I decided to write a book on teaching. While researching, I thought, read, and wrote extensively on the 2 ideas of agency and love. and I started to realize that those ideas were contradictory to much of the teaching models and practices I saw within the church. As part of my research, I also started reading the scriptures again, because for years I had just been studying General Conference talks as my gospel study. And I especially focused on the Book of Mormon. Ideas and truths started jumping off the pages at me in ways I hadn't experienced for many years. I started to see huge differences between what I was understanding in the scriptures and what I had been seeing in Come Follow Me in the teachings of modern leaders. The second catalyst was when some dear loved ones brought up the subject to me of polygamy. While I initially brushed it aside with the typical true believer reasoning that it was just something done by a few people a long time ago and it wasn't church doctrine, I started looking for myself into it, and what I found blew my mind. Both discovering the extent of church polygamy doctrine and the fact that it had been deliberately covered up and hidden by the church. That realization that there were very troubling things in our church that I hadn't been told about and that the church was actively covering up led me to wonder what other skeletons there were in our church closet. I began to study everything I could find about untold church history, and most importantly, I continued my deep dive into the Book of Mormon. As I really read the Book of Mormon with a newly opened mind, I felt impressed to begin the habit of praying vocally, something I had almost never done before in my life. Those private moments pouring out my heart to God were illuminating and strengthening. I felt humbled and in great need of being taught. I asked daily that God would guide me to truth, wherever that might take me, and then I read the scriptures, a lot. And it seemed that each day as I read, I saw things in the scriptures that had always been there, but that I had never really seen before. I felt my eyes opening and my mind expanding. The gospel of Jesus was finally starting to take shape and make sense to me. The problem was, it was showing me a reality much different from the LDS Truman show in which I had been raised. It was wonderful, but terrifying at the same time. Gradually, I came to the conclusion that the Book of Mormon was the most anti-Mormon book in the world. Or rather, that the church had become anti to the Book of Mormon. And that conclusion rocked me to the core. I once again experienced a time of deep sadness and even depression. I mourned for weeks. I felt betrayed by the church, by the leaders I had revered, by family and friends who had hidden things from me. It was devastating. And the more I learned and realized, the more I felt like I had a lot to repent of personally. I had been taught and believed a version of Jesus Christ that was very different from the one the Book of Mormon teaches. I had ascribed motives and actions to him that were the opposite of his true nature that I was coming to learn of. And I felt that I had offended him by participating in teaching, believing, and doing many things that I now felt go against his true gospel. It brought me to my knees over and over again. So now, as I continue on this journey to learn about Jesus Christ as I believe he really is, I have found a new sense of peace and relief. I no longer am constantly fearful of death. I look to the skies with hope. Who Christ is and what he wants of me makes so much more sense now, both intellectually and spiritually. I feel like I have a sense of clarity I've never felt before. But this new direction and new sense of clarity and hope has come at huge costs. I have felt enormous pressure from my loved ones and friends within the church. I have often felt doubt about where to look for the true authority for baptism and the sacrament. I've often felt alone without others who are on a similar path. Justin Griffin, in his amazing movie Who Killed Joseph Smith Part 2, described his own experience like that of entering a wilderness. This process to me has also seemed like a wilderness. It's scary not having others around me going the same direction, to whom I can look for guidance and support. But that's the whole point, isn't it? I'm coming to understand the Book of Mormon as one big escape story of good people continually escaping situations of iniquity and transgression and oppression, going out into new wildernesses, relying on God, and being led to sweet and promised lands. And so, I spiritually venture into the wilderness. Every day I pray, I study the Book of Mormon, and I try to trust in God, that he will lead me on his path, give me hope, and show me how to love. I want to provide encouragement to other people who may be experiencing a similar struggle. We are in this together. We can buoy each other up and inspire each other to be strong as we put our trust in the Lord and his scriptures and wait for his guidance towards a promised land.